Hey everyone, happy Labor Day. Fire doesn't recognize our calendars, so I thought I'd have a day off today. No dice. New fire, gotta talk about it. Alright, so we got the root fire taking off Mount Shasta. And it's got some potential, so we're gonna jump in and take a look at it. Alright, this is an animation from this afternoon. See Castle Crags over here. The view from Shasta Ski Park. So we're looking down. Here's the Crags. Here's kind of there's Lake Siskiyou over here. Looking down in Upper Sac Canyon. Anyway, so what's it all mean? Where are we on the map here? Let's start over. Hey, welcome to the Lookout. If you're just joining us for the first time, where you been? Where you been all these years? This is a Lookout. This is where we talk about fire behavior and fire science and fire politics and firefighting and smoke from fires and good fire and bad fire and fire all the time. My name is Zeke Lunder, and I got a one-track mind. Sometimes it plays different tracks, but this time of year it plays fire. So welcome to the Fire Channel. We're talking about fire. And you guys like this channel because I know what I'm talking about. So I'll spare you the biography, but been in fire since Fido was a pup. And that's what we do around here, do fire. So my website's called The Lookout if you want to check it out. We got just brain dump there from the last 5 years of thinking, writing, talking, recording, fire all the time. Anyway, back to this fire. I was up in Lake Elmore all day today, and it's windy. It's breezy. And I was thinking, man, it's fire kind of day. It was cool. But so we got some fires going here, and we're going to talk about root. Now we're going to jump over and talk a little bit about the blue fire up here in Syad Valley. But to start off, let's just talk yellow dots here are structures. And down here's Redding. And up here is Oregon. And in the middle you got this big white pimple. And that's a mighty pimple. It's Mount Shasta. And 14,000 feet plus. Big volcano. And down here you got these granite mountains, Crags, Castle Crags. So what makes the root fire interesting? Why am I coming on at 9 p.m. on a holiday to talk about it? Well, we talk a lot on here about fire history. And we talk a lot about how the Klamath Mountains has got this crazy mosaic of fires over and over, self-limiting in size because fire burns into an area just as burn. Well, you come over here to the east side of the Klamath Mountains, and if you measure out this area around the root fire that hasn't had fire, so these pink areas out in here around the root haven't burned. Those burned in 1898. And so no fire history to speak of kind of once you get north of the Delta fire. So if we just kind of measure out like I-5 west all the way up to, well, just this whole area that hasn't had fire for over 100 years, we got 300,000 acres out here that hasn't burned. And what we know about things like that is that means that the forests are really effed up from no fire. Need fire, want fire, got the fuel for fire, and we've been pretty good at putting them all out. So the question is this one of those times where we can't put it out? So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so root fire, just to get our kind of geography bearings here, we'll turn off our fire history and we'll kind of take a look at this fire. We've got Dunsmuir over here. We've got Castella right down here. And we've got Castle Creek running this way. And then we've got the North Fork of Castle Creek that runs up around the kind of the southwest side of the Crags. And we've got, like we've talked about on here a lot, we've got this mix here of private land and private timberland and publicly owned lands. And that looks like this. So once you get kind of north of Castle Crags, you got Castle Crags Wilderness. But here you got every other section is either public or private. And this fire appears to have started in a clear cut on private land. Maybe from lightning. This time of year we assume that it's a holdover from lightning, but we don't have any info. But just like most of the landscape around here, you see that the private land is kind of getting clear cut by big corporate timber barons, and has been extensively logged over the last 150 years. And then the Forest Service land, less active management, no current logging, not much in the way of fuels treatment going on at any sort of scale. So what happened today is this fire got started down here, and it ran up this mountain to the north. And so let's just kind of look at, and so big picture, what we expect is going to happen on route. Just for all you tuning in and really want to know, we think the root fire is tonight it's going over the mountain. Tomorrow it's going to be well established in this kind of upper north fork of the Castle Creek. And tomorrow afternoon it's going to be unstable weather. I expect the fire is going to come churning out of here tomorrow afternoon with great enthusiasm, and it's going to spot over into the backside here above Lake Siskiyou. So, and I don't remember the creeks right off the bat, but I think this is Castle Lake here. So that's the Cliff's Notes for tonight's broadcast. Is we think the fire is going to likely come boiling out of around the west side of Castle Crags and get itself into, we got Scott Camp Creek here. And it's not on fire yet, so we'll give it a different icon. And over here we got Castle Lake. All right, so that's kind of that's my gut. My gut feeling is that this fire is going to move hard to the north, come up out of here and become established in these watersheds, and be pushed by the prevailing winds downslope up towards Lake Siskiyou, and out here on the west side of Mount Shasta. Okay, so let's just kind of revisit the fire behavior from today and talk about what's kind of driving my gut feeling there is if you look at this fire from, let's see, 6 p.m., you see it's just pushing hard. It's got a big column that's pushing out to the north. Really wind driven, but also slope driven. And if we look here at our weather satellite, don't see much going on all day, but then you see all the smoke hanging out here from the fires in the Klamath, and then kind of midday here we see our fire start to pop out in here. Right now, boom. And see the smoke's going kind of straight over Mount Shasta. But just strong, kind of all afternoon, you've got that strong westerly flow. So, or southerly, kind of dominated southerly flow. And we think that the forecasts look like they're probably going to do something similar tomorrow. Like if we look at, here's our fire. And what we look about here in the windy app is we look at the gusts, the peak gusts, and when they're happening and where the wind's coming from. So tomorrow at 2 p.m., peak gust of 22 miles an hour. Wednesday between 2 and 5 p.m., we got gusts of 21 to 25 miles an hour, also out of the south. And so that seems like that's the story. Okay, and the other thing that we got going on So yeah, so if you just apply that kind of looking south over the fire and looking at where it is right now established on these webcams, especially kind of like out to the end here, the webcam view, you see that the fire is kind of well established on a slope, but backing vigorously down into North Fork Castle Creek. I just don't think they're going to pick it up overnight in the country it's in, and that tomorrow it's likely going to have the same westerly winds on it. It's going to be a little more sheltered tomorrow from the winds, but it's well established. It's 300 acres. That's a pretty good sized fire. It's out in here. Now, they do have some decent access, but it's just it's heavy fuels. Another thing that happened today, and I think we'll see it once you have a better perimeter. One thing we've seen a lot is that these clear cuts help spread fire quickly. And I don't know yet exactly where the fire is spread in relation to these clear cuts, but you see that like this fire got started and spread quickly in this clear cut. It's because clear cuts are super sunny and dry and full of grass and fine fuels and slash usually. And so if you get a spot into a clear cut, it really quickly, like a grass fire, becomes 20 acres. And so it's true that when conditions are mild, clear cuts can be a good place to fight fire. But when conditions are not mild, which is when we have real problems with fire, fires can spread really quickly in clear cuts, especially on slopes with wind. It burns through the clear cut real fast, gets to the other side, torches up into the mature trees that surround the clear cut, spots into the next clear cut. And so we've just seen, there's been a lot of examples I've seen in my career of that happening, of this kind of daisy chain reaction and fires covering a large amount of ground. So the good thing for this fire is just that there's not a bunch of clear cuts in this next basin. And also in this next basin, there's alpine fuels, so kind of high country, like the top of this here, 6,000 feet. Like this has had like hot fire, maybe 150 years ago. And so you got a lot of brush. And so oftentimes fires don't spread as explosively in this kind of alpine brush. But what makes me think that it's going to come out of there tomorrow and go into Scott Camp Creek and Castle Lake is just that you've got these kind of steep gullies that do have heavy timber fuels in them that are aligned with kind of an up canyon south wind. And so that's kind of the potential. And also just, this is wilderness. So as soon as you get into the wilderness area here, your options for driving fire engines in and like basically this is the wilderness boundary here. And so, yeah. So, if we're kind of engine-based initial attack, you drive up here to the end of the road, and then you can't drive no more. And the fire's kind of cooking out in here. And you got to catch it with crews. And the problem with heavy helicopters, as we've seen on a lot of these fires, is that they're incredibly effective, but oftentimes we can't get to the head because it's smoked in. Or the fire smokes itself in overnight, and then the next day, it doesn't really do much until the smoke lifts. And as soon as you can fly helicopters, the fire's off to the races. So that's kind of right now the Castle Crags are sheltering kind of Dunsmuir and Castella from this fire. It's not out of the question that the fire is going to kind of come up here and make an end run around the Crags and back down towards Dunsmuir. But at least in that scenario, Dunsmuir's got slope working for it. Fire doesn't love to run downhill. The bad news here is just that you've got all these clear cuts that are hot and dry and not and it's kind of varying stages of fuel accumulation based on date from harvest. Anyway, so right now I'd say, not expecting the fire is going to get to Dunsmuir tomorrow or Castella or Mount Shasta, but I don't think it's unreasonable, and we'll see, time will tell, that the fire is going to kind of blow up through the wilderness and out the other side tomorrow or the next day. And then it'll be established in here, and it'll be a difficult, extended kind of campaign to capture it. The wild card with all this is that if we look at the weather here, let's just see. If we look at kind of forecasts, 7-day significant fire potential for tomorrow, we've got lightning in the forecast for all of the mountains in Northern California. So, lightning probability affects things in two ways. One is you can have new lightning fires. The other thing is that lightning comes with instability, and instability is what gives us mushroom clouds in the fire. So for the Tuesday and Wednesday, we've got kind of instability and potential lightning forecast for the next 2 days. And so what that can do is help drive a plume-driven fire, but also if you have big thunderheads that build up over this fire, those build up big kind of updrafts, and when those collapse, then it blows the winds in every direction, and it's really unpredictable for fire spread. So we've got kind of critical fire weather conditions for the next couple of days, and that's what shows up as red on this kind of significant fire potential map. I'm just trying to be in the habit of posting links when I use this stuff. Okay, so the other thing to look for here is our current fuel conditions. So these are called energy release component charts, and these are kind of like our best guess based on kind of sampling stations, weather, seasonal weather, of what our fuel conditions are like for the time of year. So this blue line, we talk about these quite a bit. The blue line here is this year, and there's kind of a line everywhere on, like, this is daily data for the entire year. So if we look at the past from 2000 to 2022, the red line is kind of the maximum values recorded on any given day for that 22-year period. And the gray line is the average value on that day. And the blue line is this year. So if we look at where we are right now, we are pretty much touching the maximum value of dryness, fuels dryness, that's been recorded in the past 22 years. And it's forecast to rise here for the next week, basically, before it drops off. So it's not, as it rises here, it's not hitting the maximum driest September 3rd ever recorded, but it's pretty freaking high, and it's basically at the what we call the 97th percentile. So this top line here is the 97th percentile, meaning that there's only 3 days a year, or 3% of the days a year that there's only 3% of the days in the last 22 years that have had a higher value. Right. So that tells us just that the woods are primed for major fire growth, long range spotting, difficult to control fires. All right. So what else we got going? So like I said before, I was up in Lake Almanor today, and I just want to talk a little bit about a trick that we use as firefighters to understand atmospheric stability. So basically, atmospheric stability is what keeps the lid on the fire. So when we've got a stable atmosphere, we usually have poor air quality and inversions. So think of winter in a mountain valley, and you go out in the morning and you light your wood stove, and everyone else lights their wood stove, and you see this layer of wood smoke just kind of maybe a couple hundred feet above your house, just smokes in, and the whole valley just kind of, you just watch this. You've got this inversion where the cold air is settled down into the valley on top of the warmer air, and it caps the entire valley. And so your wood smoke goes up and just forms this layer, and it can't get out. And so stable atmosphere is like a layer cake of different temperature air, and a stable atmosphere holds down fire behavior. So if we have a fire that's burning and a real stable atmosphere, the smoke just kind of goes up, and it kind of just settles in there, and it actually kind of shades out the fire, and we call it the lid on the pot. And so you can tell if there's an unstable atmosphere because you see dust devils and you see thunderheads, and the air quality is really good. It's clear, and you can see for miles. So today, driving up to Chester was interesting because there's a rule of thumb for weather, basically, is that when you've got a stable atmosphere, the temperature cools 3.5 degrees for every 1,000 feet that you climb in elevation. So today, we left Chico, it's 85 degrees. We drove to Chester, which is at 4,000 feet, 4,500 feet, and it was 85 degrees. And so the air cooled 0 degrees per 1,000 feet. So when you have a departure from that, what's called the dry adiabatic lapse rate of 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 feet of elevation, that tells you that there's large-scale atmospheric instability. Means that instead of having this nice layer cake of different temperatures of air, you've got the air just all mixed up. And so we use that as an indicator. If you're out on a fire and you're sitting in, Mount Shasta at 4,000 feet or 4,500 feet, the lookouts up there call in their weather. And so if you know, like, hey, this guy over here on Mount Eddy called in his weather, and at 7,000 feet, he said it's 90 degrees, and I'm in Mount Shasta and it's 90 degrees. Hey, we better watch out. It's a really unstable atmosphere. So it's just something the little thing that goes on in the background. So that's going on today when I'm looking at the temperature in my car. I'm like, dry adiabatic rate, blah, blah, blah. Unstable atmosphere, and I got up to Chester and it was windy. So we got these kind of multiple scales of weather that are affecting things like this fire. So if we look at the heat satellite from today, you see the fire really kind of flare up, and then it's kind of died down right now. This is real typical of what happens at night. But it was kind of between the Dillon fire over here on the Klamath and the blue fire over here by Side Valley. Like, this fire was the most kind of active today. It's because it's got kind of a mountain above it to run up with wind on it. So, root fire. Just looking at what we would think of like terrain funneling. One thing that the fire does have going for it that makes it could be worse is, like, okay, if we look up, if we go down by Lakehead here and we're driving I-5 up the Upper Sac, we got this kind of bowling alley for wind. And the nice thing about this fire is that it's not like the tributary that this fire is on isn't like directly aligned with the canyon wind. So the winds are coming up the canyon here, and they can't just like blow straight up the Upper Sac Canyon onto our fire. They kind of have to come up here, and at the bottom of Castle Creek, they have to do a 90 and then go up to our fire here. So that's one thing this fire's got going for it, is like it's not going to get the full brunt of big up canyon winds from the Upper Sac, just because you've got this kind of really kind of hard right-hand turn at the bottom of Castle Creek. When it gets to the canyon, it's almost like pointing upstream, right? So that's, you can see that here. Like, the winds are coming up the canyon. So in general, our winds like to head up canyon. Let's pick a wind color here. Winds, they like to follow the canyons. So, here's our fire up here, and we're worried about this fire going this way. So it's still going to get some winds here funneling in on it, but the winds that are coming up the canyon would have to kind of like do that to get up here. So that is a benefit. That's a hopeful item. Anyway, that's root. So what can we expect as far as kind of timing and this thing moving up towards Mount Shasta? These thunderstorms are the wild card here. The thunderstorms could dump a bunch of rain. We've seen that, in the last week. I was up in Westwood a week ago, and it rained like 1.5 inches in the 15 minutes. But if the fire does get established up here, so we're saying kind of visualizing tomorrow. Right now we know from the webcams that the fire is kind of in here. And kind of probably knocking on the door of the wilderness. So in the morning, it might be out in here. So the worry tomorrow is that it kind of chunks up in here and then goes up and out and becomes established out in here. And once that happens, then we've got kind of fires generally don't run as fast downhill. And so it would have to but it's got a ton of fuel here in kind of Scott Camp Creek and this next creek over coming into Lake Siskiyou. So I'd say it's one to keep an eye on, for sure, because you're going to be able to see it if it comes out of above Castle Lake. You're going to be able to see it from Mount Shasta, and you should be concerned because it's a big fire. We're under critical conditions. We got unstable weather coming, and I'll just pull up some other forecast stuff. But yeah, you should be paying attention to what's happening with this fire, because it's fire season. We're kind of peak problem time right now for fire season. Let's find my fire weather here. Weird's happening on my computer. There we go. All right, what's going on here? All right, so looking at our weather forecast here for next few days, temperatures high 80s, minimum relative humidity pretty critical. Low 20s is freaking dry. Overnight humidity recovery is pretty good. So tomorrow night fire behavior will be moderated quite a bit by this high humidity. But this maximum mixing height tomorrow of 11,000 feet, that's high. That means that's kind of suggests that you're going to get some pretty aggressive like plume development, plume driven fire weather. And when that happens, then with this heavy fuel, it's going to really amplify kind of the local fire severity. So seeing that kind of really high mixing heights for those 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, plus these kind of strongish winds coming out of the south, 17, 16, and sustained winds of 12 and 10. It's just tomorrow's going to be spicy. And so we'll come back to it. Don't have much else to report on that particular fire except pay attention because it's got potential. All right. Thanks for all the comments over there. We're going to go over here and just look at blue fire real quick. Once again, got some wilderness areas turned on here. We got turn on our cities, I think. Too many layers all the time. Too much data. All right, so we got Wairika up here, Eureka over here, and in between you got the Klamath River and the blue fire we've been following a bit. It's on the northern end of it's on the Klamath National Forest. It's right here by Sayad Valley. It's kind of spreading. They got some evacuation warnings tonight for the blue fire for Sayad Valley. The fire hasn't spread super aggressively by between yesterday's mapping and today's. They mapped this outer ring here at 6 p.m. and the previous perimeter was from last night. The fire is actively spreading towards Sayad. I'm not sure exactly why they called for mandatory evacuations when they did, but I think they had some lines out here that fire's gotten across, and with the kind of the weather, the southerly flow, unstable weather, they want to make sure they're not waiting until the last minute. But there are a lot of people who live out here in Sayad. And we're going to talk tomorrow in great depth about this fire with Jamie Allen, who's a local kid. Actually went to school with my brother at Humboldt State for biology. And he's about my age, and he's been working his whole career in this area. And as a kid, he knows every freaking twig out here. So we're not going to go too deep into that tonight, but tomorrow we're going to have a really extended geek out section on the logging history, the fire history, the wildlife, everything that we can talk about that relates to the condition of this land and what this fire is going to do and what is good about it and what's bad, blah, blah, blah. Full on lookout geekery. So I'm excited for Jamie Allen. He's a freaking smart dude in his home landscape. All right, so last thing we're going to do here is go down to Garnet. Darn it. Burning up the Teakettle. Okay. I'm going to turn off the yellow dots here. Okay, I'll come back to root before we sign off here, but I just wanted to kind of catch up on this fire, the Garnet fire that's burning into Teakettle Reserve. Teakettle is we've been talking about Teakettle because they wanted to do a big prescribed burn here and spent $5 million on trying to make that happen. And the fire is just kind of in the last 2 days completely roasted that idea off the map. And so now the people who want to do the prescribed burn are talking about instead using that money to follow up on do treatments post fire, which is a good pivot, but too bad that the Forest Service and everyone else, too bad it takes so long to talk about and plan. Like we've talked about before, like they don't have to do any planning to run 50 dozers all over this landscape during a wildfire. But if you want to put a dozer through here before there's a wildfire, it's going to take you 10 years to get all the snake surveys and blah, 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 blah. So just another one of those ways that prescribed fire does not get prioritized and suppression gets to do whatever the frick it wants. Frustrating. So for Teakettle here, we got, here's where the Teakettle was the night before last. Let's just say here's where the fire was. Yeah, the night before last. Entering the 3,000 acre Teakettle range experiment area. This morning it was orange, and this afternoon it was red, and with big spots all out in front of it. And so I watched the briefing tonight, and they're like, "Oh, we're prepping the McKinley Grove Road, which is a big road out here." For some reason Google's not showing my roads, but and we think we can catch it. We got some places here. We can put some dozer line, blah, 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 blah. And all I can say is, heard that story on the Dixie for 3 months. Every day the team's like, oh, yeah, it's going all right. And you're like, okay, well, it was 850,000 acres yesterday, and today it's 890,000 acres. What was all right? What does all right mean to you? Doesn't seem like it's going all right, people. So that's the same thing here. Like this morning, the orange is like, you see these big spots all over the place, and like, today you see this big spot over here, and they're like, oh, I think we're going to hold it at the road. It's like, yeah, right, you are. You're not going to hold it at the road when it's spotting like a mile. So I'd say don't let anyone give you a kind of hopeful, enthusiastic, yeah, we're going to keep it from Wishon Reservoir, we're going to keep it on McKinley Grove. Like, this fire is going to do whatever it wants until the weather changes. And the team's job is to project confidence and try not to kill anyone. But in the meantime, like, this fire is like, luckily, this part of the fire is kind of behaving itself down here. But this part over here is not, any place you see like red that's not surrounded by white. The white, where you see white on the edge, the fire hasn't spread for 2 days. But there's a lot of places, and I guess they're doing some firing operations out in here. But basically, the fire is kind of in a position where it's kind of getting established now into Dinky Creek. And a lot of this area hasn't had fire forever and ever. And so they're like, yeah, we're looking around up here by Indian Rock to see if we can find some places to tie in. And it's like, well, that's great, but like, what are you gonna do? Like, the fire is off the chain. Yeah, it looks good up through here, through this area hasn't spread for a couple of days, but like up here, fire's gonna do whatever the heck it wants. It is doing whatever the heck it wants. And so it is kind of crazy. I know those guys on their briefing have to like say, oh yeah, it's going good. We're all getting along. Cal Fire and the Forest Service, we're working great together, and Sheriff is great. We all love each other, and then in the meantime, it's just like the fire's just like, woohoo! Yeah, we're happy that you're all working together. I'm gonna head for Shaver Lake. Anyway, Jesus, man, incident command teams. It's a shit show. They got an unwinnable job. They're supposed to, like, people expect them to corral a freaking tornado or hurricane, and like, fire's just like, not happening. Anyway, so what's the potential on this fire? The potential on this fire is like, where's the most recent large fire? Right? It's like, well, here's your potential. Anywhere there's green on the map that's not like solid rock, there's a place this fire could gobble if it wants to. 94,000 acres wouldn't be, that's not even going across the river, right? If we want to Look out over here. Go up the rocks over here too. I don't know. The fire can do whatever it wants. It's like the Dixie, you know, and so I think it's helpful to remember, like, that when people say, oh yeah, it's going good and we're going to hold this part or whatever, it's like, just remember the Dixie, and people said that every day for weeks and the fire grew crazily. So yeah, there's 140,000 acres kind of out ahead of this fire that haven't had fire for a long time, that are contiguous fuels and super broken topography. So like anything is possible. And alternately it could rain, but that's about all that's going to like keep this fire from like crossing McKinley Road. The problem is that like you go out and you prep your contingency line. So say like we've talked about this quite a bit. Let's just say we've got our sorry, I got turn on our map builder topo lines here. And we'll just draw in McKinley Grove Road. I got McKinley Grove Road here. And it's set on disappear mode. So lots of problems with like holding at McKinley Grove Road. One of them is that here the road is mid slope, so the fire is going to do this if it gets established up there. And so they're thinking, well, yeah, maybe we can come off the road and we can kind of tie in, and like maybe they can on the flanks, they can tie in some of this stuff. But in the meantime, the thing that you need to do if you're going to hold this road as your containment is you have to build a bunch of fire line, and then we know that the fire is like spotting like a mile at a time. So you have to build this line, and then you have to come in here and you have to start firing it. You have to like put fire on the ground with your crews, and you have to use aerial ignition and everything else. But like to really hold a timber fire with an indirect line, you have to fire that line, and that takes weeks to prepare. And then, so then maybe you get all this fired, and then the fire still, then your firing operation is like, whoop, over here, and now this is gone, right? So indirect attack, like under extreme conditions, indirect attack requires that you have a lot of time to prep. You have to pick a major feature way out ahead of your fire, and then you have to prep it, and you have to have time to prep it and resources to prep it, and then you have to do a firing operation, and you have to hold the firing operation. And then if you get all that right and the weather cooperates, like maybe you've secured this fire. But what we've seen on Dixie, Caldor, other big fires that are burning in heavy unburned timber, as long as the weather's not cooperating, like if you come in here and you do your firing operation, like you prep and you do your firing operation out through here, odds are really good that your firing operation is just going to become the new head of the fire. You're like, all right, well, we're going in direct out here, and the fire maybe's out here. And then you lose your firing operation, and your firing operation is the new head of the fire. And you've just like made the fire much bigger. So they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't on this fire. But just I'd say grain of salt when you hear the ops chief telling you that, oh, we think we're going to hold it out here. It's like, well, okay. All right, I'm still going to move my trailer out of Wisham or whatever this is up here. Yeah, the RV park here. I'm still going to move my trailer out, even though you tell me it's going to be all right. Because, yeah, so I'd say if you're anywhere out in here or have plans anywhere out in here, like, count on this all burning. Don't wait for someone to tell you to evacuate. If you're out here and you're not in the yellow zone or the red zone yet, it's like, just count on this all burning. Like, it's not bad odds at all that this fire is going to add another 50 to 100,000 acres before it rains. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, we'll just look a little, just kind of the reality check on all this stuff is like, what'd the fire do today? The fire's not watching the briefing. I'll tell you that. The fire is, doesn't care. So this is looking from the southeast up at the fire, and you can see that for most of the day, the fire, it was popping up a big old header. Now we talked about how like the stability of the smoke kind of packs in. But even after dark here, like the fire's still popping up ahead of us. The fire's still just cranking through the Teakettle and throwing long range spots and filling into them and keeping on burning. So is this possible to have a fire that is 50% contained that's still just kicking ass? So like when we look at here, what hasn't burned now for like all this stuff here hasn't burned for 2 days. All where you see the white on the edge. And some of the stuff hasn't burned for many days. So yeah, the fire could be 40% contained. Not unlikely at all, but that it doesn't matter. Like this 5% here that's not uncontained is suddenly going to be like, oftentimes you see containment drop significantly because the fire just became much larger, right? So talking to a buddy who's down there, veteran fire guy on the Sierra National Forest. He says really one of the places to really watch on this fire, and we'll turn off our fire history, is where it's now kind of slopping down into over into Dinky Creek, and just that, you know, that this new front, even though there's like fire hasn't spread up here, this new front is really highly problematic. And if we have big thunderstorms over the Sierra, you know, what we tend to see is that they happen out here. And we've been talking about kind of convective activity. And so we'll use some good convective color here. But say we build up a big thunderhead out here. Like all that water vapor and updraft, building this like 45,000 foot tall, whatever, not that big, but enormous thunderhead. When that storm kind of collapses, you get these outflow winds that come off of it. And so there's potential for, and they always come down the mountain, right? From the high country down to low country. So as that happens, there's good potential for that to affect this portion of the fire on the west and just blow the hell out of it. So my buddy's saying like, that's the real watch out, because we've got thunderstorm forecast for the next couple of days, that movement of the fire down into here, once it gets established down in this canyon, then it just has the potential then to become slope driven and run up the canyon and do bad things. So that's what we're watching for in Teakettle. Internet persons, their favorite thing is to say, worst bedtime story ever. So yeah, I know. I think about doing morning ones. What do you guys think about a morning live stream instead of an evening one? Let me know, because this evening stuff is hard. Like I feel like I'm performing here for y'all, and I get kind of amped, and it's hard to go to sleep. It's sit there and think about everything I said and what's going on, and so in the past I would get overnight infrared every night. And it's pretty reliable that I get overnight infrared, and then I'd get up at like 6 and prep and do a live stream at like 7. It kind of works better like with my like getting my kids to school and stuff. So like, what do you guys think about having a morning live stream instead of an evening one? Maybe you guys could comment there, because I could do either one, but I'd rather do the morning, I think, because this nighttime stuff is just kind of amping me up. Ashwagandha. All right, I'll take some of that. I usually sleep all right, but it's just this time of year. You know, I've spent my whole career working 16-hour shifts, and so this time of year I don't feel like I need a lot of sleep. But then as these days are getting shorter, nights are getting longer, I need more sleep. And right now we're just kind of running on, like I've been doing this since July 1st, so blah, blah, blah. And then how many of you guys get intel from me from other places like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook? Because what I prefer is like doing a morning thing and then doing updates through the day on social media and also on the lookout. Heidi asks how my friend's place is doing. So far, so good up there on the Klamath. Morning is fine. Yeah, I like morning broadcasts. I love talking to you guys too. It's just trying to fit it in with the rest of living is just trying to keep it sustainable here. I want to not lose my shit. John Fisher. Someone who likes the evening says they can fall asleep to my voice. Well, you could just replay the morning one. Only YouTube. Sweet. Sounds like people want morning. That's fine. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Twitter. Glad some people are still on Twitter. I feel like we don't have any. I just kind of got off Blue Sky because they don't let me write very long posts, and just don't have that much engagement there. And I just kind of did it because I felt like a lot of people who followed us were leaving Twitter. But I just can't. It's too much work to like post everywhere. So I haven't given up on Twitter, even though I got no love for Nazis. But a lot of people complain about Twitter being full of Nazis. Like I don't see a bunch of Nazi shit, but I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. Like I ought to post my stuff there. All right. Someone's wondering if we moved California deer season, we'd have fewer wildland fires in August. Marvier. I'm glad Mike Marvier's watching. It's nice seeing all you guys over there. Mike Marvier and I had a good outing one time up here in this area where this fire's burning. What do you think is going to happen, Mike? So Mike, I asked Mike to tell me like what happened here in the history of this landscape. When did it get logged, etc. Mike's a forester, just retired, who managed some of this land out here. And he said that was it the 50s? They just shellacked it. And I don't know if I'd ever heard the word shellacked be applied to land management, but I understood what he was talking about. Anyway, we got to get you on the show, Marvier. When you speak up in the comments, then like we're going to put the spotlight on you, hand you the mic. Mike Marvier and I went out here. He was managing some land, and they had just cut a bunch of trees down out here somewhere, and the Forest Service. This is kind of a fun story. The HERS fire. See, this is why the broadcasts never go like shorter than 8 hours. They decided they were gonna burn out this whole basin on the HERS fire. I don't even know where we are. Sims over here. It's all looking inverted, but basically Mike's clear cut was down in here somewhere, and they hadn't had a chance to pull the logs out of it yet. And so they were asking CAL FIRE, like, hey, can you guys hold off? Forest Service basically said, like, we're going to light a firing operation along this entire ridge system here, and we're going to burn this whole basin, and that's going to, like, keep the fire from getting out here. And so Mike's clear cut was like down in here somewhere maybe. And so CAL FIRE is like, well, we work for the private timber landowners, so CAL FIRE came out here and they like built a dozer line down this ridge, and they're like, well, we can hang it up here with some aggressive firefighting. And the Forest Service was in charge of the fire, and they're like, well, we're not doing that. Like, the plan is the plan. Like, we've got a bunch of crews and we're firing this whole basin here. And this is taking like 5 days, and when we're done, this is like gonna be contained here. And here's poor Mike, got his like clear cut full of trees laying on the ground that need to be yarded out of there. And CAL FIRE's like put their dozer line and cruising there, and then the firing team just came right along the top of it. But Mike and I are driving down one of these little podunker roads, and this is steep. Like, it doesn't do justice here, but this is like some of the steepest land I've ever been on in my entire life. I think Mike and I are coming down one of these roads here, and I see this movement out my window, and I'm like, I thought it was a bear running full speed down the hill at us. And then I ducked, and this like bear-sized boulder like went right over the top of the truck. Just you could hear it whoosh through the air right over the top of the truck. Mike was unfazed. We drove down here and talked to some like some crazy hillbillies that were like, I think this is your unit, Marvier, that were like splicing together cables. They were like getting ready to do their stuff, and they had pretty much zero concern that they are inside the middle of this giant fire. Let's see if we can find those pictures. Anyway, good to see you on here, Marvier. I learned a lot getting out with guys like Mike who just have spent like, it's just another day at the office, these guys. Where's that stuff? I've got like serious organization issues with my archive, like million photos and stories and all that. But yeah, we got to get you on here, Mike, and tell some more stories, because these guys have seen a lot. See if my photos come up here. All right, any other comments? Where are we at here? Got lost again. Yeah, so he's asking about hunting and fires getting started. A lot of the people start fires, but a lot of them are started by lightning here. It's interesting to look at like the biggest fires we've had, and they tend to be caused by like PG&E. A lot of times hunters start fires in places that are accessible by road. So most hunters don't want to go backpacking. They want to like set up a sweet camp and have all their stuff. And so oftentimes we have good access. When hunters start a fire, oftentimes we have good access to put it out, versus like if PG&E starts a fire with a power line in the middle of nowhere and we can't get to it. Delayed initial attack is really what causes our worst fires. So human caused fires, a lot of them are still like institutionally caused, or by railroads, or power lines. But yeah, blame PG&E for everything, because they can pay it out. I was gonna pull up, see if I find some funny Marvier fire pictures. Here we go. Hers. Dang, it's only got this many. This is goofing around with Mike Marvier in the middle of a fire. So when we talk about like prepping indirect line and having 2 weeks to do it, this is what I'm talking about, right? Is that like this is a dozer line on a ridge when I'm out here in the Hers fire. Like it takes a long time to prep a line. And they got it plumbed here. They've got like pumpkins. They've got like, this fire was going on for weeks. And so when we talked about a big box kind of indirect attack, like this is kind of often what it takes to box in a giant fire. You can't just like put in a little line and like have snags all over it and then expect the fire's just going to come up and stop, right? You got to prep it, and then you got to light off of it and get some depth off of that, so there's like the fire can't run up the hill and slam into your line. I was wondering where the rest of my Hers pictures are, though. That's all I see. Oh, here we go. All right, bonus. Opening some logging pictures here. I think that's probably one of the problems too with like getting people interested in talking about forestry and land management, is just that most people, all they know about logging is coming from like watching X-Men or something. And I mean, yeah, I've learned a lot about logging from watching X-Men too. But there's all these details that matter when it comes to managing land, right? Like how you clean up the slash. So this is running around the woods with Mike Marvier, and this is kind of a panorama of the site where they're trying to haul the logs out of here before the fire got here. And so the plan here was that the Forest Service was going to light off around here and the fire was going to back down into here. And this just happened to be inside their box. But when we talk about indirect attack, oftentimes to control the fire, you have to back off like 10,000 acres. And so then that's why this also burned hot, right? It's because there was all this, after logging, they clean up the slash and they want to be able to see enough dirt to plant the trees. But this all burned while it was still just freshly cut. And these guys are just kind of getting set up with their big winches and stuff to pull all this stuff up the hill. Thought I had some better pictures of the awesome hillbillies, like these kids out there splicing cables, like they're working on a ship in the 1700s or something. All right. And it's interesting when you look at like that fire. Talk about the cedar fire. Yeah, cedar fire. If you're lost in the woods, don't start a fire if you're in the middle of a big East Santa Ana wind, because this guy burned 250,000 acres, killed 16 people, burned 4,000 homes. Okay, snags and slash. We're just looking at pictures of slash. Slash is what's left after you cut down trees. And this is not a representative photo of like what logging looks like after it's done, but this is all slash. It's just that they're going to clean this up enough that they can replant. And so slash is basically debris left from cutting trees down. Like this is also logging slash here. So after you cut down the forest, you got all the trees, you haul away the big parts of the trees, you leave the branches, and then you plant new trees out there. But slash is all the stuff that didn't get removed from the woods, that isn't worth any money. This is slash too. This is oftentimes slash gets cleaned up, but it's expensive to clean up slash. And so there's kind of minimum standards that the state sets on like how much slash you can leave. Obviously, if you're going to replant trees, you got to like be able to see enough dirt that you can get in there and like find the ground to plant the trees in. So oftentimes what happens in the past is you'd pile all this stuff up, you'd come out in the winter, you'd burn it. And Marvier, who we've been talking about here, is a frickin' pyro. And he's one of the few foresters that still like had the cojones to actually go burn things. A lot of the timber companies are so terrified of getting sued or losing their land to the Forest Service if they start a fire and have to pay, that they won't burn these piles. But this is how I got into fire, was working for the Forest Service, cleaning up after big logging sales, burning stuff like this in the winter. So as a college student, they gave us bags of napalm and sent us out in the snow with snowshoes and said, burn the piles. And you'd take off your snowshoes and you'd climb up on top of the pile. It's all wet and there's snow, and you'd crack open your gallon Ziploc bag of napalm and pour it down in there, and then stick a drip torch in there and rain a bunch of mixed diesel and gas down in there, and it'd get going. And then you'd sit back and eat your lunch and watch this like house-sized pile of wood burn. And I thought, man, if I don't get a job in fire, I'm going to frickin' prison, because I love this stuff. And so this is also slash. So sometimes they use bulldozers to pile the slash up after they cut it. And I think that when Mike took me out for the day, I wasn't the lookout in 2018. And so he probably didn't know that I was like collecting like instructional materials for future broadcasts. But and so there's a wide variety. I'll just say that there's a wide variety of how well slash gets picked up, depending on who's doing the work. One thing that's changed a lot in my career is that like originally, back in the day, if you did a clear cut, before you planted it, you came in here in the winter and you burned this. You just broadcast burned it. You lit it and it burned as one big fire. And then you had no slash, and much reduced fire hazard for your stand, for your trees after that. What happens now is these companies do these clear cuts, and then they're afraid that they'll get sued if they burn the slash. So oftentimes there's a lot of dead and down material in the clear cuts for a long time. It takes, in dry places, it takes a long time for the slash to decompose. And that creates this enormous fire hazard for the future. And especially once, like, they start off by herbiciding all this so the brush won't grow. Plant the trees, and then a bunch of grass and ferns grow, and then it kind of grows up through all that slash. And so if you get a spot fire in here, then it runs like crazy, because you got like all the elements. You got the fine grass kindling, and you got the small stick kindling, and you got the bigger stick kindling. You got everything out here you need to build a nice big fire. And that's what happens. And then, you'd think that it'd be easy to like run through here with a bulldozer if you have a fire and put it out. But I'm talking to my buddy who's a dozer operator. He's like, well, yeah, every 10 feet you're hitting a freaking giant stump that you can't see because of the slash or the trees. And so you're just like breaking your neck, just hitting stumps all day, going through what you think is kind of like a big open meadow. Anyway, snags. What can we say about snags? Let's see if I got any good snag pictures here. I showed some pictures the other day from some red fir forest. There we go, Carter Creek. Snags are standing dead trees. And in a lot of like kind of old forests, you have a lot of them. And then they stand dead for a long time, and then they fall over and they rot and they break into pieces. And they're a problem because when they're like, rotten wood is like kind of like Velcro for embers. And so when you have snags in a forest, like this one out here, that kind of punky rotten wood, if you got a bunch of embers flying, it catches it, or if the fire burns along the ground and gets to the snag, fire burns along, gets the snag, it kind of burns up into the snag. And now you got this tree on fire, and the tree's like shooting embers. Like if it's windy, the tree's like, if something's burning down here, if like you have a campfire, it's got like a couple little embers, no big deal, because the wind at the surface is like really light. But if you got something that's 80 feet up in the air, the embers are like doing this. And that's how fires get across lines. So snags are difficult because they can throw embers so far. Like if you're trying to put in a control line out here, you basically have to come and cut the snags, not only the snags that are going to like fall over and cross your line, but you got to cut the snags that are going to like throw embers across, because you're cutting a line out here in the forest to stop the fire that's coming from here. And so, yeah, you have to cut the snags that are going to fall, and you also have to cut the snags that, because you expect when you're putting your line out here that this is all going to end up burned before you're done. So snags they're just fuel, and different configurations of fuel create different problems for firefighting. Ryan Duggar says, what's it cost to have prescribed fire per acre on private land? Just depends on the land, on the prep you need to do. If you do, so I know there's a project up by McLeod. They're doing about 2,000 acres for about $1.5 million. So what's that? It's $3, $750 an acre. That required a lot of prep. So very wide range. But if you're interested in hearing, if you want more information on it, get a hold of me. And like if you send me like a parcel number or an address, oftentimes I can kind of look at it and tell you something. All right. Internet person says, give firewood to the people. All right. I think it's bedtime, folks. I'm glad you guys want morning broadcasts, because I think that'll work better. So I'm going to get up in the morning and see what I have for these fires. If I don't have anything super different, like what we know right now is happening, I'm not going to do a broadcast in the morning. And I reserve the right to do evening broadcasts, but I would love to transition to morning broadcasts. So route is kind of the top of our radar right now. If it makes big runs overnight, or if we get a perimeter in the morning that shows that like the threat is advanced towards Mount Shasta, we'll do a broadcast in the morning. Otherwise, we're going to be spending tomorrow prepping for big interview with Jamie Allen about the history of forestry and fire and wildlife and everything in the Klamath. And we want to do more of that long form stuff. So when you guys buy our merch or become members on PayPal, that's going to be paying for me to go hang out with Mike Marvier and eat breakfast and ask stories that I can tell you all. So make sure you check out the Lookout our archive. I'm a little behind on posting new stories there because it's a lot of work, but check it out. And thanks everyone. I'm gonna play my funky music.